Well, good morning, everybody. Here we go. I can't believe we're doing this the way we're doing it. I am sending you an email. Hopefully you've got it already. Sending you an email with regards to what we are doing. Right now, I want to finish up Unit 5, Reconstruction and Suffrage Notes. That's why you see what you see in front of you. This is the fourth 9 weeks of non-traditional instructions. So I just want to go ahead and dive into this. I just want to let you know that I'm doing this as normal, but we are, as my email says, we are going to make some adjustments in how Moodle will look. So expect that, but it's probably not going to happen until tomorrow. I'm going to be working on it all day today. So I didn't want to change anything until we got started on this. So please be patient with me. This is all new territory, and we are probably going to make some mistakes, but we'll be able to pull it together eventually. So if you have any questions, email me, and I am working on ways for you to actually contact me either by phone or in some other manner. So that is coming as well. So again, be patient. If you have questions right now, please email me. All right, so let's get started. I want you to again open up, and this is the last time we're going to go there. I want you to open up your Unit 5 Reconstruction Notes, and it again, remember, it should look like this, okay? And we have already done these goals, and just a reminder, if I get ahead of you in my explanation, then by all means stop the video and catch up, okay? So we have finished goal 5. Get my cursor over here. And we have also done goal 6. We have done goal 10. And now we are doing the last goal, which is, oh no, we have done 9, sorry. And now we are working on goal 7. We're going to finish up goal 7. Oh yeah. Okay. All right, so this in a way is a lot of review, and I'm going to take you back to our amendments that we went through and did that pretty briefly. And let me make sure I've got my notes in front of me. I do. Okay, so we're going to go back to 12. Now before I do that, I got ahead of myself, sorry. I want to go over, before we get ahead of myself, I want to go over content goal 7. So here it is. Constitution amendments have altered provisions for the structure and function of the federal government. What we're talking about here is that the framers knew that the Constitution was not going to be perfect. It would need to make adjustments, okay? So they provided for that. Specifically, and we've been talking about some of those amendments, specifically, let me move this down. Okay. We're going to talk about what we have talked about already with electoral votes. Framers of the Constitution created a method of presidential selection that reflected the nation's federal system of government. President would be chosen based on electoral votes from the states. A candidate is required to win a majority of the total number of electoral votes in order to secure the presidency. Electoral votes are determined based upon the number of each state's representatives and senators. So remember, that is that particular, let's go ahead and make that formula, okay? Formula for electoral votes votes are, sorry about that. Remember what I said, be patient here. All right, come on. All right, so representatives plus senators different computer, I'm not used to this one, equal electoral oh my goodness, frustrating. Electoral votes. All right, so remember we said Ohio was 16 representatives plus 2 senators equals 18 electoral votes. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. So when we go to the election, after we have had our election, and then that establishes who our electoral votes will go to, then we get to cast 18 votes. All right, so that's standard. That is what the Constitution has said. Now we have some altered procedures, though, for the Electoral College. So let's take a look at some of that. All right, so we're going to go back to this. All right, and so we're going to look at 12 once again. Now this you already have. This isn't anything you need to rewrite, okay? You've already got this. So let's see here. I want to make this big for us. Come on. All right, so just as a reminder, 12th Amendment is this. It redefines the procedure for electing president and vice president through the Electoral College, making 2 positions. Electors meet in their state capitals to vote on different ballots for president and vice president. If no candidate receives a majority of electoral votes, Congress decides. All right, so this is what I need you to note in your notes, okay? So in 1796, the candidate who received the most electoral votes won, and the runner-up got to be president. So that's what it was like prior to the 12th Amendment. This meant the president and vice president could be from different parties. So, okay, so think about this. I put both of their pictures here. Just think about this. If that was the case today, if it was still the president was elected and the vice president was the runner-up, that could mean that Trump could be president and Bernie would be vice president, or vice versa. Bernie could be president and Trump could be vice president. Can you imagine the chaos? Can you imagine how crazy that would be? So the 12th solved the problem by allowing each party to nominate their own team for president and vice president. Meaning, and I'm going to go back up so you can see the picture that I've got there. And this was the last, it would mean that for the last election, that Trump and Pence were one ballot, would be one ballot, and Clinton and Kaine would be another. Now we don't know yet who will be, if Bernie was elected or Biden was elected, or chosen as candidates. We don't know who their vice president would be. I would assume, although the president has that option of changing vice president, but I'm pretty sure that President Trump would keep Vice President Pence. Okay, So hopefully that's a clarification on that. Okay, now I want to go back to and move on to the next part, which is, whoops, I hit the right thing. Okay. All right, so we have clarified this portion of it, separating. That should be what we just did in our notes right there. Okay, now we're going to talk about the District of Columbia was granted electoral votes. Now, let me go back and get to the right slides, and that would be slide 18. All right. Okay, so now we're going to look at the 23rd Amendment as it relates to how the District of Columbia was granted electoral votes. So this was, again, don't write this, you've already got it, unless you feel the need, go ahead. But this is a brief description of what the 23rd is. But I need to go into greater detail. So for your understanding, Washington, D.C. was a federal territory, okay, not a state. So specifically that meant there was no local government. And I should have put that in there. There was no local government. Congress made their decisions. So you could add that to that. In fact, I think I will do that just so that will encourage you to do it as well. So Congress was their government. Well, let's do it. Congress, let's change that. Made the decisions. Okay. Let's see, put it like that. Okay. All right. So, Congress made the decisions. Okay. They also had no right to vote in federal elections, meaning no representation in the government. Meaning Congress made the decisions, yet they had no representation to Congress. None. So these people, and they numbered several hundred thousand by today's standards. They had to pay federal taxes. They could be drafted into the military. And citizens in other states had more voting rights than the district residents. So these were all things that the District of Columbia, the people who live there, had to deal with. Now remember, because I don't want you to think that the people we send to Washington, D.C., who are in Congress, they have residence there, but they don't vote there. Their representation is back in the original states. They don't vote. They don't have the option to vote in Washington, D.C. So all those people that are living there have had no representation at all. Okay? Now, let's go to the next slide. Now, the 23rd Amendment treats the District of Columbia as, it changes this. It changes in that it finally treats the District of Columbia as if it were a state. But for only purposes of the Electoral College. This gives the residents of the district a right to vote in presidential elections. So they do get representation now with regards to voting. However, it still is not a state. It does not provide, there's no representatives in Congress, and Congress still continues to prescribe their form of government. In other words, they tell D.C. how it's going to be run. So even though they do get to vote, the people in that, they still don't have much representation. So it seems like that is still a little wonky and doesn't seem right. But at this point in time, that is what it is. Okay, so now, oops, we don't want that. Come on. So I'm going to end it here. Come back to what we're working on. And now we're going to look at presidential term limits, and succession and disability. Okay, so I'm going to kind of combine these two. And let's go back to this. All right. And go to this one. This one is, I'm not going to change, this is already, you have this, I'm not going to do anything real exceptional with it, because it's really, at the heart of it, it's everything that you need. There are 2 terms per president. That's what the 22nd Amendment established, and you can only serve 10 years if the president, if a vice president is called to president. That's it. That's pretty much it. So, but I want to expand some on what we've been talking about with regards to then the 25th. This has to do with the succession, which is extremely important, the presidential succession and disability. So, 25th Amendment, 1967, and again, this is all you have. You have this already. Don't worry about it. Outlines a procedure for succession to the president. Vice president takes over as president if president is unable to fulfill his job, and the new president, old VP, picks a new vice president. Now, to make this a little bit bigger to work, sorry, should have done that sooner. Okay, we move on. This is what you need to add to your notes. Okay, the 20th Amendment provides for succession. We already know that. Plans for the newly elected president or vice president unable to assume a position. If the president is unable to hold the office, vice president will act as president. Now, I highlighted that on purpose because we're looking at the 20th Amendment. But the 25th Amendment changes this a little bit. Okay? The 25th was passed to clarify what would happen upon the death and removal or resignation of the president or vice president. Upon the death or resignation of the vice president, upon death or resignation, the vice president will become president. So let's make that sure we're clear on that. And I can just, when I read this again, I just realized what that sounds like. That kind of sounds like death and resignation of the vice president. So upon death or resignation of the president, comma, the vice president will become president. He won't be acting as president. He will be the president. And then, of course, he can choose his own vice president and nominate them with Senate approval. Senate will always have that approval. There we go. All right, so that clarifies and finishes the notes for our Unit 5. So please, once you are done with this, make sure you upload. Any questions, email me. And thanks, and be patient. We'll get this pulled together, and it will eventually run very smooth.